Jewish Educator at the Ohio State University Hillel here in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm joined by Rebecca Capusta, who is a hall director here in Morrill Tower, which is, you can see it from the skyline, it's one of the big towers here at OSU. And I'm here to talk about Jewish life on campus and give an overview of it as an example of what faith and spirituality can be like on any campus. And sort of go into the question of, are we even allowed to talk about this? Yes, we are allowed to talk about this because religion at varying degrees is a huge part of the lives of our students. I remember from my own college days that religious life was big and it was talked about. And every campus is different, so I want to add the caveat that I'm giving what works here at OSU from my experience here at OSU, but your campus may be different. And if you want to know how to find out more about Jewish life on your campus after hearing what I have to say, I'm happy to make connections. We have a network of over 500 campuses here in this country and thousands of professionals, so I'd be happy to make those connections. And I want to encourage you to ask questions, so put them in the question box. You can email me. My contact information will be at the end. And I'm really excited to be here and sharing my knowledge with you all today. So broadly speaking, most Jewish communities on campus work through the umbrella of Hillel International. Hillel is sort of a national organization of Jewish student centers around the country and around the world. And our mission is very simple. We want to enrich the lives of Jewish students so that they may enrich the Jewish people and the world. So we have both a very particular mission but also a very universal one. And our vision is that we want a world where every student is inspired to make an enduring commitment to Jewish life, learning, and Israel. What those commitments are remains to be seen and is very much individual, and we work with students to really craft out what their Jewish journey is going to be like, but we want the commitment to be there and we want it to be enduring. Just to give you a sense of what Hillel's global impact is, if you're on a campus with a big Hillel, if you're on a campus with a small Hillel, whatever it may be, 100,000 Jewish freshmen start college every year. College education is very important in the Jewish community, and we do whatever we can to encourage as many of our young people as possible to attend. So we're on 550 campuses in North America. We have thousands of interns, professionals, and so on and so forth, really engaging as many people as possible. And you can, if you want, you can zoom in on this graphic and really see more of the data. We are also very into data. So any data point that I do present is very recent, but also done very scientifically and according to all the standard sort of methods of collecting data that are used these days. And we are interested in building the Jewish future. Our community views us as the pipeline to get Jewish students from their parents' homes into creating their own Jewish homes later on. And this is some of the ways in which we do that. There are a number of challenges when we talk about outreach in the dorms. First of all, inclusivity. Is Jewish programming inclusive of everyone in a dormitory environment that is striving to be as inclusive as possible? So if we're doing something that's geared towards Jewish students, but the goal of the dorm programming is to be inclusive to everybody, those two things don't always work out. And so what we have to do then is, if we want to go into a dormitory, anything that we do has to be universal, but also particular at the same time. So if we're going into a dormitory to light Hanukkah candles, well, it can't just be for the Jewish students, it has to be for anybody who comes. If we're going in and doing meditation, then it has to be for everybody, not just the Jewish students. And then the question is boundaries. Do Jewish students want us to bring Jewish programming into their dorms? And do they want to bring their Judaism into their dorm rooms? What we have to remember is that for many students, the dormitory is their life. That's where their friends are, that's where they eat, that's where they socialize, but for some it's just where they live. It's just where they sleep. And so we're balancing a lot of those things when we work with students. Some students do not want to see me in their dormitory. It is their space, it is private for them. They are much happier to meet me and do programming in some of OSU's more public spaces like our union, or just come to Hillel. And one of the advantages that our Hillel has is that our building is strategically located between the north and the south dorms. Other challenges and trends. First of all, there's culture shock. For many Jewish students, especially if they go to a large public university, they are encountering large pockets of non-Jewish students for the first time. Many of our Jewish students are coming from places where there are lots of other Jews, like New York, New Jersey, the East Coast, Chicago, and Cleveland, and places like that. And for many of the non-Jewish students that they meet, they are the first Jewish person that that student is meeting. And some of our students know how to deal with that, some of them don't, and that's very much a culture shock for them. Then there's freedom of choice. When you live with in the Jewish community, when you're under your parents' roof, your parents are telling you how to engage Jewishly and they're making decisions for you. But when you get to college, you get to make the choice. You want to do Jewish things? Great. You don't want to do Jewish things? Your mother's not checking, although some mothers do check, and then they call us to see why their children are coming. There are questions of who, in fact, is a Jew and what is Jewish identity. The different movements within Judaism are arguing constantly about, technically speaking, who is Jewish? Does you need one parent, two parents, which parent? Converted, my great-grandparent was Jewish and I feel Jewish, but am I really Jewish? It's a lot of questions. And then Jewish identity. What does it mean to be Jewish, and how does that translate into my daily life on campus? Let me talk about boundaries, which I mentioned before. A lot of students want to separate their social and religious experience from their dorm living experience. Some are very happy to integrate the two. Some of that depends on whether they're involved in Greek life or not. Some of that depends on whether they're very active in campus organizations or not. But that's the trend that we're seeing. And I spoke to a number of students who are very active in their dormitories as RAs and as resident managers to speak to this question specifically. I'm going to skip to the last two, then I'll get to the next two. Ritual practices, holidays, and dietary needs. There are some campuses where it is very easy to keep to the Jewish dietary laws. So if you go, for example, to University of Maryland, if a student keeps kosher, which means that they adhere to Jewish dietary laws, well, it's very easy to do. There are dining halls that offer kosher options. Hillel's, their Hillel's dining is connected to dining services. But they have a large Jewish population. If you have a very small Jewish population, it's much more difficult. Then if your university doesn't offer kosher options and you keep kosher, well, how do you do that while living in a dorm, especially if you don't have a kitchen? And then there are holidays. There are some holidays that are very individualized and very personal, but there are some that are meant to be celebrated as a community, and how do students choose what to do and what not to do? And the last thing is Greek life. Jewish students are overrepresented in Greek life as opposed to their broader population on campus. So here at OSU, Jewish students represent 5% of the campus population, but they are 10% of Greek life. And that gets them out of the dorms, but it still has some of the same questions, but it's a big part of our community. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but if you have questions on any of this, please type it into the box. I'll be happy to answer, or I can save it for later. Let's move back for a moment to anti-Israel sentiment and anti-Semitism. The two are very much related, but they're also, to a certain extent, very separate. On a lot of campuses right now, there is a lot of anti-Israel sentiment. It's tied into issues of social justice and world politics and things like that, but it is very, very dicey. And often it creates an inhospitable environment for Jewish students on campus because Israel is so connected to Judaism. And so we see that most often in the form of BDS, which stands for Boycott, Divest, and Sanction. And it is a movement to address Israel's political situation through economic boycott. And it is viewed as more than just being anti-Israel. It's viewed as being anti-Semitic, which means anti-Jewish. And so even if it were a viable method to peace, and I'm not going to say here whether it is or is not, it often creates a hostile environment for Jewish students. Jewish students feel very unsafe when these things are happening, and the tactics that the BDS movement uses are in many cases geared to do just that, though there are some BDS movements that are very peaceful and benign and don't really harm anybody. But it's a broader atmosphere, and someone who our community is very much affected by it when it happens, and so it's an interesting, the way that our community handles it is very interesting. When we talk about anti-Semitism, that's a swastika has been drawn on a Jewish student's dorm. That has nothing to do with Israel. That has to do with just people who don't like Jewish people. And A lot more of those incidents are happening now. Thankfully, it hasn't happened on our campus, but it certainly could. It could happen right now, in 5 minutes from now. But how our community responds is very important. And a lot of students look to us when one of these things happens on campus. So for example, when there was a BDS resolution in our student government, and its merits are not important, a lot of Jewish students came to us for guidance and for support as they worked to deal with it and to be Jewish on campus as these things were happening. Who are our students? Going back to some of the questions about Jewish identity and whatnot, our students come from a lot of different kinds of families, one with both parents and one with Jewish parents. When it says you're Hillel, this is referring to Ohio State, and the aggregate is what the national survey results were. Hillel International did a massive survey last spring to ask some of these questions to get a better sense of who our students are. So as you can see, Ohio State is right around the aggregate. But I think that over the course of time, the number between both Jewish and one Jewish parent is going to shift as intermarriage, Jews and non-Jews, increases over time, and it is increasing. That's a separate webinar. And we do get some students who convert over the course of their college career. Those are not a lot of people, but we do have them. Our students are coming from a variety of denominations. About a quarter of students come from conservative Jewish families. Depending on the school that you go to, you'll have students who come from Orthodox families, which is more observant and a little bit more to the ideological and religious right. If anyone on this call is at the University of Michigan, you have those kinds of students. Northwestern, you have those types of students. Here at Ohio State, we have very few, so that's why we're very far from the aggregate. Same thing with Reform Jewish, that's a little bit more liberal. And then people who define themselves as just Jewish. That is the rising number of the unaffiliated. Say that you're conservative, Orthodox, or Reform is not just an ideological question, but it's also a question of, well, what kind of synagogue do I go to when I'm at home? So that just Jewish number is going to rise in the years to come, and then I'm not really sure what that is. Lastly, this is a question of whether students have a day school education, which means they went to private Jewish day school at some point. We're slightly above the aggregate, which I was very surprised about, but they're out there, and if you, again, go to big public universities and states with large Jewish communities, you will have those types of students. Talk about participation rates by class. As you can see, participation rates sort of vary depending on the number of activities. This number here, 38% of freshmen are participating in 1 to 3 events. That's because, as you know from working with freshmen who are often forming the majority of students that are living in dormitories, at least here at our university, they're not really sure what they want and what's going on, so it takes them a while to figure it out. But as you can see, 33% of freshmen are having a high volume of participation, and that number, as you can see, rises and then takes a little dip but stays pretty high as you move on. Because sophomores, juniors, and especially seniors, they know what they want to be doing, and so they're able to make those choices accordingly. But freshmen are really spread out, running the gamut. What are they doing? About 30% of our undergraduate Jewish student population is participating in some sort of religious observance or education over the course of the year. And that represents, though, 48% of our active populations. That's a very interesting figure to look at. Most of our involvement, though, has to do with social life and Greek events. So 38% of our undergraduate Jewish student population is involved in Greek life, and 61% of our active population is attending social and Greek events. So for social stuff, that's really where we have a huge niche to play for our students. And they'll come whether it's from their Greek house or from their dorm. If we're serving brunch with bagels and lox at noon on a Sunday, they'll come from near and far in order to get it. In terms of experiencing or witnessing anti-Israel sentiment on campus, as you can see, 43% of our students last year who answered the survey had experienced it, and 46% is the aggregate. And 30% of non-Jewish students that participated in the survey, because some ended up taking it, had witnessed that or experienced it themselves. And the same goes for anti-Semitism on campus. Thank God, only 25% of our students are experiencing or witnessing that. Ohio State has a pretty good record of not having these kinds of things, but they happen, and it could be something very subtle to someone in a dormitory asking a very insensitive question that they think is very innocent, but in fact is not, to a swastika, if we sort of have the range of responses. The most important thing that I want to come away with, that I want everyone to come away with, is how we can integrate into the dorm life despite the challenges that our students present us and the broader trends going on. So the first thing is that we ensure that key dorm staff know who we are. The director of Ohio State Residence Life knows who I am and where to find me, hall directors in halls where there are high concentrations of Jewish students, and we have ways of figuring that out, they know who we are and they know where to find us. Number two, we provide them with a clear list of the programs that we offer, and I'll show some of these things in a couple of slides from now. If resident staff know what we offer, they can then know to find us when they want something that falls into those categories. The third thing is that we bypass the Jewish students completely. I don't need a Jewish student to invite me to their dorm to do a program. If I know that there are 100 Jewish students in a particular dormitory, I'm already there whether they know it or not. And so I'm going around them. The next thing is that we can be a source of diversity in the room. Diversity takes many different forms. It could be racial, economic, religious, or social, but we can play into that, especially when it comes to religious. We also, going back, we build relationships with residence life professionals, as I talked about earlier, and we bring inclusive, non-ritual-based programming into dorms with concentrations of Jewish students, which means that the programs that we do have a Jewish twist, but they're not Jewish in and of themselves. So for example, we offer, here, let me get to our, so I'll get to the example in a second. The next few slides are a packet that every hall director received, and as many resident advisors as wanted received as well. We introduce ourselves, we talk about our mission and what we do, we tell them who we are and what our staff does, and then we offer then we give them exactly the programs that we offer. So for example, Jewish culture, world melting pot. What most people don't realize about Jews is that there are actually lots of different types of Jews, and we come from lots of parts of the world. And so this is a program that only works right now because of who we have on our staff. So my family originally came from Eastern Europe about 100 years ago, but our Israel fellow, his family comes from the Middle East, and he doesn't look like most Americans think a Jewish person looks like, but he's just as Jewish as I am, and we do a program talking about our different traditions and how our communities function Jewishly, and we bring food. Two different types of, the same type of food, but with different recipes to show that we're eating the same thing with the same purpose, but a different recipe. And he actually couldn't eat what we brought because he's a vegan, and what we had a lot of eggs in it. We also do something, because the Jewish community is so closely associated with Israel, our Israel fellow does a program on how to have a conversation about the Middle East, which is full of hot button issues, not just related to Israel, but he is well trained and well equipped to instruct people on just how to start a conversation about that. I also offer a program called Wings and Wisdom, which I bring some wisdom on a very universal topic, but from Jewish sources, and I bring wings. We offer financial workshops because we have a partnership with some of the local banks, and we have a number of other resources that we provide. With the exception of Jewish culture, World Melting Pot, and Wings and Wisdom, most of these other programs come at no cost, and the cost that we do charge is very low. Often I'll have an RA come to me and say, I have money to spend, how can I spend it with you? And I'll say, well, we can do all sorts of things. And we put our contact information at the bottom. I serve as the clearinghouse on our staff for these things. And it's a way for not just Jewish students to see us, but for non-Jewish students to encounter us as well. And then we provide resident staff with information about religious observance specifically. Not that they have to go, not that we're doing it in the dorms, but a lot of Jewish freshmen come to campus and they're like lost puppies, and they don't even know where to find the things that were so easy for them to find at home. And so we make sure that the resident staff just knows what some of the more basic things that we're doing from a ritual perspective are, when they are, and how to find us. And that's what this kind of information is. This was for the holiday season this past fall. And these holidays are major engagement tools for us, and we keep extensive data on who's coming, and we're doing outreach as a result. And then we give some other important information for holidays later in the year. So when Passover, the big one is Passover, because Passover is one of the holidays that even the most unaffiliated, uninvolved Jewish students will want to be a part of in some way. And it involves very serious dietary laws that even for someone who doesn't keep the standard Jewish dietary laws, some of them are militaristic about keeping the ones for Passover. So that's actually reminds me that I need to have a conversation with our residence life and dining halls for the holiday coming up. But it is coming up in April, and it's something that if you have Jewish students, it's imperative to be aware of. Questions? You can feel free to email me about Hillel and Jewish life on your campus, or contact me separately, but if you have questions now, I'd be really happy to answer them. Again, this is really just a reflection of my experience here at Ohio State. You know, the answers will change depending on whether it's a public or private university. There are things that we cannot do because we're a public university, but there are things that if you come from a private university that are totally in the realm of possibility. And the other thing is that in a public university, Hillel is not, I'm not a university employee. As you can see, my email address is on Gmail, not OSU. But if you, in your university, there may be a Jewish chaplain, some sort of director of Jewish student life, or whatever it may be. So really, some of these things really depend on what the relationship between Hillel and the university are. The university knows who we are. They know where to find us. But there are certain things that they can and cannot ask us for because it's a public university. So we'll take a moment for anyone to type questions. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I think since this Klakuho region has so many institutions, both large and small, and not everyone, like you said, there's only 500 campuses, I think, right?
550 in North America.
Okay, so 550 in North America. So say a campus doesn't have a Hillel Center. What do you recommend for those staff members to do to help these students? Can you contact Hillel International? What does that look like?
Okay, so the first thing is, yes, you can contact Hillel International, and they are happy to share resources with whatever staff member on your campus is in charge of religious outreach and programming like that. If you don't have a Hillel on campus, first of all, perhaps as a Jewish, like an organization of Jewish students that are organizing and doing things, maybe they've been in contact with Hillel International or other groups, but very often Jewish professors become the clearinghouse for those types of things. So for example, at Denison University, which is about 35, 40 miles from here in Granville, Ohio, they don't have a Hillel, but they have a couple of Jewish professors who are in the know and are often the ones that Jewish students seek out and become the clearinghouse for those kinds of things. It so happens that I know most of them. And our Hillel has a special relationship with Denison for other reasons. So my supervisor is married to a Denison professor. So we know what's going on in Denison. But if you don't have a Hillel, Hillel International is happy to help you, and they have professionals who specialize in small campus outreach, and they can give you all the tools that you need to do outreach to Jewish students. But Jewish professors often are good resources for that as well. And whether you have 1,000 Jewish students and no Hillel or 100 Jewish students and no Hillel, the same sort of rules apply. Although if you have 1,000 students, it's likely that you have a Hillel. And even if it's not a formal Hillel with a building and a staff, there's an affiliation. It's sort of like a franchise. So at Denison University, they're a franchise of Hillel, but they don't have a formal Hillel operation going. And this is not something that we built overnight. Hillel International is about 90 years old. The first one was established at the University of Illinois. We were like the fifth and the sixth one established here at OSU. And these methods and ideas have taken us years to hone and really to master, such that a call to residence life is not a crazy thing for us to do anymore, whereas in the past maybe it was. And also, as Ohio State has recently changed its rules about who has to live in the residence halls, we've had to change our entire social strategy and outreach strategy in order to meet that. So yeah, it really depends. Does size both matters and doesn't? Any other questions?
Well, if you have any other questions, Rabbi Ilan's email address is there. And I think he's more than welcome to share his wisdom or answer those questions for you.
Yeah, and I would also say that if you don't have a relationship with the Hillel on your campus, should you have one, I really want to recommend doing so. We can really offer a lot to you if you bring us into the room and invite us to the conversation. So for example, next week, our Multicultural Center is doing a day of learning and of introspection when it comes to issues of social justice. And they invited us to submit a proposal. It doesn't mean we'll get it. I think that we will. But they've invited us to the conversation. And those are things that we have a lot of wisdom to bring to the table. And we also have a lot of outreach methods that everybody should be doing, not just us. And so we're really happy to share our wisdom and not really silo ourselves to just what the Jewish students are doing. And I would really encourage you that if there is anti-Israel, anti-Semitic incidents on your campus, to do alert your Hillel professionals or to alert Hillel International. We have resources that can help with the post-incident outreach and things like that. So please do invite us to the conversation, especially in the bad times, but also in the good times as well.
Rabbi, we have a couple of questions. The first one, are there any other formal Jewish campus ministries beyond Hillel International?
Yes, yes, there are. The other one that you might have heard of is something called Chabad. Chabad is, how do I best describe Chabad? Chabad is, it's about a 200-year-old movement, but their campus outreach is about 40 years old. They come from the more orthodox, more traditional world, and they're run out of homes, usually by a married couple, a rabbi and his wife. In places where Hillel is weaker, they are stronger. In places where Hillel is stronger, sometimes they are just as strong and sometimes they are not as strong. But they are a presence on campus. They're the ones who you'll most likely see on campus, encouraging students to perform Jewish rituals and things like that. They're much more forward in their approach, but their goals are very much the same, but you won't see me doing that. If you have like a campus Hanukkah menorah lighting, it's more likely that they're the ones doing it as opposed to Hillel. At least I think that was the case here. So it really depends. I don't want to, without going into editorializing, Chabad is very easy to work with. They're usually very nice people. They'll, if you invite them into the room, they'll offer many of the similar things that Hillel will. I know that they don't have the sort of Israel advocacy things that we do, but they're plugged into sort of the same outside organizations that we are as well. Which reminds me, I did forget to mention one thing, which is Birthright. Birthright is a philanthropically funded free trip to Israel for Jewish college students. Hillel and Chabad are the clearinghouses for those trips. You can sign up independently, but if you want to do that, Hillel or Chabad will help you do so. We have a very cordial relationship with our Chabad. Some Hillels have great working relationships with their Chabads. Others, it's not as friendly. But we're very fortunate on our campus that it's very cordial and work very nicely with them. But there are, as to other student organizations on campus, there are some that are very small, and they'll often work on campuses where there are certain types of Jewish populations. But those are not very large. They're not as large by any stretch of the means as Hillel and Chabad are.
Okay. We have another question regarding your relationship with Greek life. Is there a Jewish fraternity that you work with?
There are. There are actually 3 Jewish fraternities that we work with, and 1 Jewish sorority-ish. We work with the national Jewish fraternities are Alpha Epsilon Pi, Zeta Beta Tau, and Sigma Alpha Mu, often known as SAMI. On our campus, we have a great relationship with all 3 of those houses, and our social calendar lives and dies by what they are doing and whether they come or not, which is not necessarily the best thing. It's just the reality at this point. It's crucial for Hillels to have good relationships with them. And in the sororities, it's a little bit murkier. There are national Jewish sororities. Here we have Alpha Epsilon Phi, but they have a lot of non-Jewish girls in their sorority, but they're a Jewish sorority. They just wouldn't say that to you. And we work very well with them as well. But we also work similarly to how we work with residence halls that have large Jewish populations or small. We work with Greek houses that have both large and small Jewish populations. If there's a Jewish student there, we'll find them. And we have what's called engagement interns. Our engagement interns are trained to find unaffiliated Jewish students. And whether that's in their dormitories, and we have ones who are specifically in dormitories, they come from all different Greek houses because those very often those are the types of personalities that join Greek life. Our interns will often help students make a nice transition from living in a residence hall to getting involved in Greek life. That's a really important skill that they have. But we do a lot of work with them, and they're great. We work with their national organizations on a national level as well, and they're an integral part of our community.
Okay. Another question, how does it work with residence halls life staff for lighting ritual candles in the halls?
Okay, so it depends on the residence hall and the rules. I'll give you an example of what we did last year when Hanukkah came. So for Hanukkah, you light candles. It's 8 nights, so the number of candles depends on the night. And so what we did was in the we had one dormitory that we had a huge event in. We had about 60 or 70 students. And the hall director was very understanding. All he said was that you had to have a fire extinguisher within a few feet, and you had to do it on tinfoil and blow them out when you're done. So even though you're not in my home, I wouldn't blow the candles out after I finish eating dinner or whatever it is. At the end of this event, we did blow the candles out, and that was a reasonable compromise. As for Hanukkah, it gets a little dicey because you're supposed to put them in a place that's public, and every individual is supposed to light it in their homes. So that gets really dicey for students that are in cramped rooms. And there are ways around that, including using electric menorahs and lighting them quickly and then blowing them out, whatever it may be. And if any students had had any issues, we would have interceded on their behalf. But to my knowledge, there were no issues. On a weekly basis, to bring in the Sabbath on a Friday night, there is a candle lighting. You light 2 candles, though. And again, it just depends on the rules, and were we doing it in a public way in a residence hall, we would follow those same rules. But a student who wants to light them as an individual, one of 2 things probably happens. Either A, they follow the rules and either don't do it or do it according to the rules, or they don't do it, they do it and then don't tell anybody. So it really just depends on the student and the rules in the residence hall. But I would say that it behooves residence halls to find a way to make it work. For some Jewish students, especially on the Sabbath, but also on Hanukkah, those candles are a big deal. And if they can't light them, it really throws them off and makes them feel out of place and not at home. So if there's a way to let them do it, I really want to encourage residence halls to find ways to do it. If it's really going to be a fire hazard, we're all reasonable people, we'll understand. But all efforts should be made to find a fire-safe way to light candles for the 8 days of Hanukkah, but for the Sabbath on a weekly basis. And thankfully, Hanukkah this past year fell during winter break, so it wasn't really a problem.
Okay. We have another question. With regards to inclusivity, could you provide an example of a hall program that's not ritual-based?
Yeah. The culture program that we did was not ritual-based in any way. Anything that's ritual, I can make non-ritual in order to teach a lesson or to provide a certain experience. And just because there's a ritual involved does not mean that someone who's not Jewish can't participate in it. So for example, let's say candle lighting on a Friday night. We're in Houston House right now, and were they to invite us to do Shabbat with them, it's not just about the blessings and what it means for Jews, but the candles are a way to make a separation between the week and the weekend. Anybody can appreciate that, whether they're Jewish or not. And so while some of our specific programs, I'll sort of go back a few slides, so none of these programs are ritual-based, but anything ritual-based can be made to be as inclusive as possible, as long as I take it out of the Jewish context and share with everyone the universal lesson that exists.
Don't see any additional questions. Or any additional questions from the audience today? see no other, I will go ahead and conclude today's presentation. I'd like to thank Rabbi Schwartz for presenting to us this afternoon. Like I said previously, the session is recorded and will be posted on the Glakuho website shortly after we get wrapped up. And I encourage you all in attendance to share the material shared here today and the recording with any of your colleagues who are unable to attend. Thank you, Rabbi Schwartz, for your time. It has been enlightening.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.